Iran is hiding something extremely dangerous, which is why the US wants to get it. This thing is one of the reasons why Operation Epic Fury started, and it can't just stay with them. This is enriched uranium currently stored in underground bunkers. If this is neglected, it could lead to the creation of a nuclear weapon capable of causing massive destruction throughout the entire Middle East. According to the Wall Street Journal, Donald Trump is considering whether to launch a ground mission in Iran to retrieve this uranium. There is no final decision yet, but it is estimated that there are almost 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium in the country. If it remains in Iran, the government has the option to further increase its level until it is enough to make a nuclear bomb capable of hitting major cities. But before we continue, please like this video. It means a lot to us content creators. Thank you very much. Trump doesn't want to send soldiers unless it's necessary. He prefers that Iran be forced to surrender its nuclear materials as part of an agreement to end the conflict. It seems there are details about this in a circulating plan, but it's still unclear if this is really what the US wants in the end. Caroline Leavitt warned that not all information coming out about the plan should be believed. According to The Independent, reports say the plan has already been given to Iran via Pakistan's government. Even though Iran denies this and says it's as if the US is just talking to itself. But whatever the exact content of the plan is, it's clear that what the US wants. There must be a condition included that will prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. They want to shut down the nuclear facilities, open the bunkers for regular inspections, and most importantly, stop the enrichment of uranium so that Iran can't get closer to making a nuclear bomb. Donald Trump repeatedly emphasizes the U.S. position throughout Operation Epic Fury. On March 30th, while aboard Air Force One, he directly told reporters that Iran would give up their nuclear weapons and follow what the U.S. wants. But this came with a clear warning. According to him, if Iran doesn't do this, their country will be gone. These are not just simple words. This is a clear message that the U.S. will not leave until they get the result they want regarding the nuclear issue. If Iran does not surrender the enriched uranium, the U.S. is ready to take it by force. According to Caroline Leavitt, Trump is being given all possible options. This means that every way of doing this is being studied. But this does not mean that a final decision has been made. Meanwhile, the Pentagon and U.S. Central Command remain silent. They are not providing any details. And usually when this happens, a major plan is being formed. If the U.S. succeeds in a ground operation in Iran, the Iranian government will lose one of the most important things they use to gain influence in the Middle East. The next question is how close Iran is to making a nuclear weapon. The answer depends on the enriched uranium they possess. According to the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation, Iran has approximately 440.9%, or about 972 pounds of uranium, that has been enriched up to 60% of U-235. This is important because U-235 is used to make nuclear weapons. For it to be ready for making a warhead, it needs to reach 90%. This means the process isn't finished yet, but they are getting close to that point. And that's the reason why the U.S. wants to get this uranium before it reaches a more dangerous level. At first glance, it seems like Iran isn't ready to make a nuclear weapon yet. Because their uranium level is only at 60%, you might think they're still far from the 90% target needed to make it ready for bomb making. But this is where the real problem shows up. It's not the 60% that the U.S. fears, but the fact that the hardest part of the process is almost finished. According to the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation, 99% of the total work needed to reach weapons grade level has already been completed. This means there's only a little left to do. To better understand this, there's a measurement called separative work. This is the method used to measure how much effort has been put into enriching uranium. This combines the number of centrifuges, how long they've been used, and how well they perform. Based on the data, Iran has already produced approximately 54,540 SU. To complete the increase from 60% to 90%, only 564 SWU are needed. This means that only a little over 1% of the remaining work is left. So even if it looks like there's still a long way to go when you just look at the percentage, in the actual process, they're already very close. According to Iran Watch, if the operation of their centrifuges continues, Iran is capable of producing enough uranium for 5 to 8 small nuclear weapons in about 2 weeks. And that's not all. They would only use about half of their current stock to do that. That means they can repeat the same process and double the amount of uranium within a month. This is where it becomes clear why the U.S. is in a hurry. It's not because Iran is immediately ready to make a nuclear weapon, but because they're very close to that point and only a little time remains. According to Iran Watch, the additional work needed to reach weapons grade is between 480 and 768 SWU. This matches the previous estimate and further proves that Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than many people think. But there are some things that could affect this. The centrifuges need to still be working and easily accessible. This isn't certain because some of Iran's underground facilities have already been hit by bunker buster bombs. And until now, it's still unclear which ones are still intact and which ones have already been destroyed. There are also experts who don't agree that Iran is close to making a nuclear weapon. One of them is Jeffrey Lewis from the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies. According to a report by Scientific American on March 11, he said that there is still not enough evidence that Iran is close to making a nuclear weapon. He also added that according to the U.S., Iran's main uranium enrichment capability was already destroyed during Operation Midnight Hammer in the summer of 2025. There's another question. How many experts are left in Iran who are capable of making this kind of weapon? But even with doubts, one important point remains. Iran still has the enriched uranium, and as long as they have it, it remains a threat to Donald Trump and the entire Middle East. If Iran regains its ability to enrich, it could pose a major threat to U.S. allies. So for the U.S., the solution is more straightforward. Remove the uranium so Iran has nothing to use to continue the process. This is where the direction of Operation Epic Fury begins to change. From an attack using airplanes to possible action on the ground. And before that even happens, there's a big problem that needs to be addressed. Where exactly is Iran's uranium hidden? It seems there's already a clear idea of where Iran has placed the enriched uranium. According to Rafael Grossi of the International Atomic Energy Agency, the most likely places are Isfahan and Natanz. These are the same places that were hit by the U.S. using powerful bunker buster bombs during Operation Midnight Hammer. According to Grossi, it is likely located underground. In Isfahan, the main stack of uranium is hidden, while another is stored at a different location in Natanz. In these two places, there are still centrifuges that can be used to further increase the level of uranium up to 90%, which is needed for a nuclear weapon. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists also agrees with this idea. In their report on March 29, they showed satellite images of Isfahan. They also saw a large truck carrying cargo. Even though it's not clear what's inside, the timing and appearance of the cargo raise suspicions that Iran has already moved their uranium to that location. It's just not clear how much. There's a possibility that the entire stack is now in Isfahan, which means it might no longer be in Natanz. But since there's no confirmation, the U.S. is forced to prepare for operations in both locations. There's another big problem. The tunnels in Isfahan still seem to be operational even though some parts were hit by attacks, and it's not that simple to enter them. They still need to be thoroughly searched. And there could be soldiers and traps inside. That means just going in won't be enough. We need to find exactly where the uranium is hidden inside these tunnels. And this is where one thing becomes clear. If the U.S. is going to launch an operation, ordinary soldiers won't be enough. It will need a more specialized force and a more carefully planned move. to succeed. For this kind of mission, ordinary soldiers are not enough. Special forces are really needed to get Iran's enriched uranium from the tunnels underground. This becomes even more difficult because of the damage those places have already suffered from previous attacks. Before the U.S. can send in troops, they first need to identify the correct entry points to the tunnels. They also need to consider that Iran might be guarding these entry points, and they could even destroy the entrances if any forces try to enter. This means it's not a simple operation. According to the Times of Israel, the U.S. might need more than 1,000 personnel just for Isfahan alone. Their job is to secure the area, seize the uranium, and guard it while possibly being hit by missiles and drones from Iran. Aside from that, there is an estimated 200 kilograms, or about 440 pounds of uranium. The uranium there is at a 20% level. If this is included in what will be taken, the operation will take longer because more needs to be brought out. The information the U.S. has before the operation begins will have a big impact. They know how much uranium there is and where it is likely hidden. According to the Times of Israel, the U.S. also believes there is a narrow passage in Isfahan that could be used to get the uranium. But there's also a risk. If Iran knows about this too, they could set a trap in the area. Despite all of this, the U.S. believes they are capable of carrying out this kind of mission. If Donald Trump decides to go through with this, it would be considered one of the most complicated and dangerous operations that could be carried out. As for how this will happen, it will likely start with special forces flying to the target location. Based on reports, Isfahan is the most likely location of the uranium. And because it's inside the country and far from the sea, a landing from the sea can't be used. This means it has to be done from the air, using a fast and precise entry to reach the target before Iran can respond. It has to be done from the air. This means the U.S. will send soldiers through an airdrop. But even while they're still in the air, there's already a big risk. They could be met by missiles fired from the ground. This includes man-pads as well as drones that could attack them while they're descending. Before the landing even happens, it's likely that the U.S. will first launch airstrikes on Isfahan. The goal is to weaken the surrounding defenses. But it's still uncertain how effective this will be, because shoulder-fired weapons can be hidden inside tunnels and are hard to find. According to James Hackett, who was formerly connected with the U.S. Marines and the Defense Intelligence Agency, this is where the role of the 82nd Airborne Division and the Marine Expeditionary Units comes in. They will prepare the area before the main force enters. The goal is to weaken the defenses so that the ground troops can enter without immediately facing heavy resistance, usually under the cover of darkness for greater advantage. It's possible that Iran already has an idea that an attack is coming because of the bombings, but since they're used to consecutive airstrikes, there's a chance they'll think this is just another routine attack and won't immediately see the real plan. Once the preparations are done and the defenses are weakened, that's when the special forces will move in. When they arrive, the first thing they'll do is secure the area so they won't get surrounded right away. The Marines and the paratroopers of the 82nd Airborne can help here, while the special forces will enter the site itself. Engineers with equipment are also part of the operation. They will check for mines or traps and look for a safe way to enter the tunnels. Their movements need to be coordinated with the special forces to find the exact location of the uranium. When it comes to retrieving the uranium, according to the Wall Street Journal, there are possibly around 40 to 50 containers that need to be located. They look like scuba tanks. You can't just take them easily, so you need a special team that knows how to handle them. Handling radioactive materials to ensure they can be safely removed. At this point, it becomes clear how complicated the entire operation is. This isn't just a battle of weapons, but a battle of timing, accurate information, and precise coordination of every group involved. There's another big problem with this operation. You can't just take the uranium. This is dangerous, and there's a possibility of an accident. That's why each canister needs to be placed in special containers to prevent leaks or more serious incidents. Once the uranium is taken out of the tunnels in Isfahan, the mission doesn't end there. It still needs to be taken out of the site itself. For that to happen, an airfield and strong defenses are needed against the drones and missiles that Iran will surely use to prevent the planes from leaving. The U.S. has a nearby option, the Shahid Vatanpur Air Base. It's close to Isfahan, so it can be used to take out the uranium. But there's a catch. It needs to be captured and secured before it can be used. That means extra work and extra time. You could also build a temporary runway right near the nuclear site, but either of these two options would still make the operation take longer. If the defenses at Shahid Vatanpur are weak, it would be the preferred choice because the process is more straightforward. The initial airstrikes, along with the Marines and paratroopers, could help weaken the area beforehand. One thing is clear, this won't be a quick operation. Because of the large amount of uranium and the difficulty in extracting and transporting it, this could take several weeks, not just a few days. This will go beyond the expected timeline that Donald Trump wanted for Operation Epic Fury to be finished quickly. Despite this, the U.S. has the capability to carry out this kind of mission. According to CBS News, U.S. Special Forces have been training for this kind of operation for a long time. They even have training sites that mimic the appearance of tunnels like those in Isfahan to be better prepared. Once the uranium is secured, it could possibly be flown to ships in the Arabian Sea. This way, it would be kept out of reach of Iran's missiles. Overall, this is not just a simple attack. It's a complex mission that requires precise timing, careful movements, and exact coordination. Because even a small mistake could cause a big problem. The U.S. can also use bases in Kuwait and eastern Iraq as temporary destinations. The trip is shorter, but there's a trade-off because those bases are also easier targets for Iran's missiles and drones. In addition, the U.S. needs to control the airspace around Isfahan so their planes can enter and exit safely. They also need to set up strong defenses against drones and missiles while carrying out the operation. So it's clear that this isn't a simple mission, but this is really how Special Forces operations are. It's difficult, complicated, and high risk. If the U.S. succeeds here, this will be one of the most impressive missions in many years. And for them, this might really need to be done. The U.S. wants Iran to surrender the enriched uranium. If this doesn't happen, the threat of a nuclear attack will remain for countries in the Middle East. This is unacceptable for the U.S. That's why Donald Trump's administration seems increasingly ready to do everything to remove this option from Iran. But this isn't the only possible plan. There's another target being considered. This is Karg Island. If this is hit, Iran will feel a huge impact because a large portion of their oil revenue passes through here. In other words, while there is one plan focused on the nuclear threat, there is another option focused on Iran's economy. Over time, it keeps getting smaller. It's clear that there are still many things that are uncertain. Even though there are plans being presented, there is still no clear answer as to how the situation will really end. Because of this, each country is becoming more cautious with their next steps. There are times when even if a decision is ready, they still choose to postpone it, not because of a lack of ability, but because of fear of its possible consequences. A single wrong step can cause a bigger problem that's hard to stop. Along with this, there are countries preparing for various possible scenarios. They're not just focused on a single plan. They're creating different options to be prepared, even if the situation suddenly changes. This also affects the speed of decision-making. Instead of acting immediately, some prefer to wait and observe the actions of others first. In this way, they avoid decisions that they might regret later. As events unfold, the situation becomes clearer. It's not just about who is stronger. It depends more on who is more careful and more prepared for change. Because of this, every decision needs to be carefully thought out. Cooperation between countries is also important. Even if they are not on the same side, there are times when they need to talk to avoid bigger conflicts. Even if it's not always visible, it plays a big role in preventing the situation from getting worse. Over time, it becomes clearer that there is no quick solution. Every step has its consequences. Every effect and every decision comes with a risk. That's why being prepared for anything that might happen becomes even more important. In the end, the situation remains uncertain. No one is sure how this will end, and no one knows exactly what will happen next. But one thing is clear. Every step taken now will have an effect on what will happen in the coming days. As events continue to unfold, there is one part of the situation that many people do not immediately notice. This is about how information affects people's perception of the entire event. Nowadays, a country's strength is no longer measured solely by actual combat. What people know and how they understand it also play a big role. Every news report that comes out has an effect on people's minds. When there are reports saying that the situation is getting worse, it causes fear and worry. On the other hand, when there is news saying that the situation is still under control, it gives some relief. But not all information is complete. There are details that are not immediately released, and there are parts of the story that are not immediately apparent. Because of this, people have different interpretations of an event. There are people who immediately believe the first report they hear. There are others who wait for confirmation before reacting. Because of this, each person sees the situation differently. At the same time, information spreads very quickly. Just one video or post can reach millions of people within minutes. Because of this, it becomes harder to control what people believe. This also affects daily life. When there is news about danger, people become more cautious. Some avoid going out, and some change their plans just to avoid possible risks. In this situation, it's not just the leaders who are thinking. Even ordinary people are forced to adjust based on the information they receive. As time goes by, it becomes clearer that information is not just simple news. It becomes part of how people act and how they respond to situations. When information is confusing, people's reactions also become confused. When it's not clear what is true, doubt grows, and it becomes harder to decide what should be done. That's why it's important how information is released and explained. It's not enough to just have news. It needs to be clear and easy to understand to avoid misinterpretation. In the end, you'll see that the situation doesn't just revolve around the actions of countries. How people understand it also has a big impact, because nowadays, information has the power to either strengthen or weaken the reaction of the whole world. As events continue, it becomes clearer that the battle isn't just on land or in the air, it's also in people's minds. They continue to receive and process every piece of news they hear. In this situation, it becomes clear that not everything is under control. Even with plans and preparations, there are still things that are unexpected. Because of this, being ready for the return becomes even more important, and the ability to adjust to whatever happens. Not all decisions immediately bring results either. That's why patience and careful consideration of each subsequent step are needed. And whatever you choose, it's clear that the situation will escalate to a higher level of tension.